Good evening, everybody. It's 5 o'clock, so we'll make a start to our monthly webinar. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for the time. I'll just start by introducing our special guest this evening, who's going to be presenting to the topic of maintenance, reactive versus planned, and saving money over the long term. So it's my pleasure to introduce and welcome tonight Engelbertus Geldenhuys from a group called Cloud. You'll see their logo bottom right. Engelbertus is a trained civil engineer, quantity surveyor, and he works nationally very closely with maintenance projects. He's involved with 10-year maintenance inspections, developing 10-year maintenance plans, insurance replacement valuations, and he's got extensive experience inspecting and working with large residential schemes across South Africa, and he's been involved in the space for a very long time. He's a service provider to Trafalgar, somebody that we enjoy working with, and I think he's eminently qualified to talk to us about this important topic this evening. Also joining me as usual, my colleagues Karine Coetzee, based in Cape Town, Trafalgar's National Property Management Manager, and Peter Menon, Trafalgar's Head of Legal and Marketing. I think it's a really important topic that we're going to broach to this evening. It's not a particularly comfortable one for many people, but it makes a very big difference in terms of the presentation of residential properties and others, and certainly to the lifestyles of owners and residents living in those properties. With these properties being significant assets for owners, it obviously stands to reason that they are maintained and that over the long term, they maintain and improve their value. And we've seen time and again that if maintenance is not structured, is not planned, is not a priority, that the conditions and presentation and service delivery in these properties can certainly steadily decline to a point where it becomes very difficult and challenging to turn them around. We'll, as usual, please do just raise any questions you might got in the Q&A. Karine and Peter will endeavor to answer those. If there are any topics which are important and worth emphasizing, I will bring those into the discussion with Engelbertus. We will finish as usual promptly at 6 o'clock. There will be a link to a short survey at the end. We would appreciate you giving brief feedback. It just helps us tailor these webinars, to make an impact. They are intended to cover useful topics which help owners and trustees and directors in community schemes. And any suggestions for topics you would like us to cover, there'll be an opportunity to give that feedback as well. So we would appreciate you taking a few seconds to respond in that way after the webinar. And I'll just say that, in terms of the setup of trustees and director boards, it is very helpful having a designated role, to focus on maintenance, somebody that has an affinity for maintenance, that has time to walk a property, to inspect, because that's very important to see what's going on, somebody that is comfortable engaging with service providers, with the managing agent in terms of maintenance projects. And I find it with experience that, that can play a critical success factor in terms of managing maintenance in an effective way, in a time-efficient manner, from a trustee perspective. And it's also really important as a service delivery feature to owners and residents, because being their homes, they are expecting fast responses, quick and efficient results to their maintenance problems, and, regular feedback throughout. One of the challenges in the space is that maintenance contractors are generally busy. They're generally on the road. They don't typically get to emails and correspondence, until the end of day. And, there is a sort of challenge to get feedback and to, get quotes quickly and to respond to maintenance challenges in as time efficient a manner as owners and residents would like. So, coordinating maintenance contractors is part of the challenge, and I'm sure Engelbertus will talk about that shortly. So with that introduction in mind, thanks once again for joining us. And Engelbertus, I'm going to hand over to you to continue. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you. And hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you, Trafalgar, for inviting me to present here. Looking forward to this and hope you all learn something. I just want to make sure, what is everyone seeing? Is everyone seeing the
Right,
presentation?
we do. We're on the cover introductory slide, Albertus.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good. So we went through the agenda. Thank you, Andrew. All right. Today, we're going to talk about something that affects every property owner, trustee, and resident, and that's maintenance. Specifically, we'll talk about the difference between reactive and planned maintenance, why preventative maintenance is essential, how a solid maintenance plan will save you money, how poor maintenance leads to higher levies, and how to manage contractors effectively with your plan as a guide. Okay, so the goal of all of this is simple. Spend smarter now to avoid spending a lot more later. All right, let's get into it. First, reactive maintenance. So let's define reactive maintenance. Reactive maintenance is when we fix something after it breaks. So example is a burst pipe floods the unit and then we fix it, or the roof leaks and then we repair it. Waterproofing fails, then we repair it, and then all the resultant damage of all these things, and it builds and it builds and it builds. So all of this is unplanned, it's urgent, and usually expensive. So typical problems with reactive maintenance, and let's call these headaches because they are. So emergency call-out fees adds to the cost of these repairs. Here we go. Sorry, I'm just getting my bearings here. More damage occurs before the repair. Water seeps further into the structure. Damp rises, timber elements that were supposed to be protected breaks, like the roof trusses or timber windows, and meaning resultant damage to the initial unmaintained element. So again, it builds and it builds. We have a disruption to residents. The urgency of the repair leaves everyone without a voice in when what will happen. And we as owners just have to accept the inconvenience because it has to be done now. Then short-term fixes instead of long-term solutions. Usually everyone just wants to get the repair over and done with at the cheapest cost, as always, meaning the quote with the minimum scope of works allowed to repair is accepted and the core of the problem is not necessarily addressed. So this means that non-reputable, inexperienced contractors can be used to do the urgent repairs. All right. So I think everyone joining this webinar will be in agreement that reacting to maintenance is not the best approach. So let's look at planning the building and sharpening the proverbial axe to maintain our buildings effectively. So opposed to reactive maintenance, planned maintenance is thought out and it's scheduled and done before the failure happens. So we will get into the mechanics of the maintenance plan itself shortly. By planning and proactively maintaining, we prevent failures like servicing the pumps, lift generators, security equipment. Other big ticket items we find pushing up the total cost is usually painting. If painting is addressed before surfaces deteriorate, the substructures are kept from the elements. So some examples of substructures repairs actually costing much more than the coating system itself, like the coating system of painting over timber or the walls, includes we get spalling of concrete, plaster repairs, steel and timber windows and door repairs or replacement, and rusted structural steel repairs or replacement, and these are very costly. We can also, with confidence, predict the cost of maintenance and adjust and keep on adjusting periodically when maintenance should happen for each maintainable element. So this helps with creating maintenance projects, which is much more attractive for contractors to price competitively in contrast to small reactive maintenance call-outs. So the whole process becomes cost effective. The whole exercise of the 10-year plan is controlled, predictable, and cost effective. So the key difference between the two is that reactive maintenance is crisis management, and planned maintenance is control and asset protection. Good. So planned maintenance is preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance is the backbone of a well-run property. Okay, so here's why it matters. We extend the asset's life. Regular servicing keeps all our pumps and generators and security equipment running longer. We get much longer lifespans out of our roofs. The paint keeps protecting the substructures. And it keeps your guarantees intact, like the waterproofing. Waterproofing typically carries a 5 or 7 year guarantee, but there's always a subtext in those guarantees that explains that every 2 years you must do a maintenance layer on the waterproofing. And we find that a lot of the guarantee holders miss that subtext or don't read it, and it doesn't get done and your guarantee fails. Right, so it reduces major repairs. We all know a small issue caught early stage, a small problem, like a minor crack, is a cheap repair relative to an ignored crack. The ignored crack results in water ingress, water damage, and all the resulting damage from there, which can include spalling and paint failures. It improves safety. So electrical faults detected early, fire systems that are maintained, walkways and roads that are kept safe, meaning that we repair potholes and failing paving and trip hazards for residents. So this it protects the residents and reduces your liability. And then lastly, it maintains the property value. A well-maintained property just looks better and it sells faster, and it attracts higher selling prices. So it's safe to say that maintenance is an investment and not an expense. Okay, so let's look at the actual plan. Now we're through the schematics. The law dictates that we need to have a maintenance plan in place, but not necessarily what the plan should include. So let's look at this. We developed a plan and we call it a good plan. And this good plan should be split into at least 2 sections. The corrective maintenance section and a scheduled maintenance section. So an extract from a maintenance plan done shows how we split the maintenance works into corrective and scheduled. So see year 1, here we had 200,000 for corrective maintenance and 222,000 for scheduled maintenance. Year 2 to 10, the scheduled maintenance keeps going on. So it was only in year 1 that we addressed the corrective maintenance. So we can view the corrective maintenance same as reactive maintenance, but this is now planned and packaged together into a single project. We view these works or repairs necessary to be done before we can start maintaining building. Things like waterproofing, roof repairs, stuff that needs to be addressed to stop other elements from deteriorating. We can't paint walls before we fix roofs, and the roofs keep leaking and keep destroying the walls that we just painted. Okay, so these figures here are backed by a detailed, we call it a bills of quantities in the quantity surveying world, and we package them together and we see what needs to be done before we can start with the maintenance. So this will be our year one cost at 400,000 Rand, which is the corrective and scheduled done together. So in essence, we address the backlog reactive maintenance that was never attended to when we start with the plan, before we start the actual scheduled maintenance. Okay, let's look at the next one. So the good plan should also be detailed. The more detail in the plan, the better. Maintainable elements should be listed and quantified. This extract shows how the painting of steel elements are listed. So it's quantified in our quantity per element. We looked at painting on metal. So everything is quantified. There's a unit linked to that. All of these are measured in square meters. We have a market related rate to this. So we're very fortunate. We have the big libraries of rates and current rates and historical rates, and we apply that to all our maintenance plans for actual what these elements are actually going to cost. We get to an amount. We put in our cycle years. So we say every 6 years we need to clean, prepare surfaces, spot prime, bare metal areas with approved roof primer, and apply 1 full coat of undercoat and 2 finishing coats. So the description, I want you guys to have a look, it's also very detailed. It explains exactly what needs to happen. And then we say the date that it was last maintained. In this instance, it was 2023. So 6 years later, we tally it up. And it's going to happen again in 2029. That's what we are expecting. Okay. So detail as much as you can within all these rules applying to get to your final figure. The maintenance plan should also be packaged into work groups, keeping in mind things like access to maintenance elements and contractors' trade packages, like, for instance, painting or roofing, waterproofing, carpentry, things like that. So I'll show you guys how we handle that. So this is, again, the paint extract, the paint bill extract. And we package together plaster repairs, paint on the facade walls, and then paint on windows as well. Yeah, it's in here. And this is determined by, this was a multiple story building where scaffolding would need to be erected to address any one of these elements on its own. Now, by combining the works, scaffolding, which is actually almost the same rate per square meter as the paint works itself, becomes a one-time project cost. And we club multiple flies in one go by addressing all of these components while the scaffolding is up. And that saves a lot of money. So on top of the access to the works cost, we included normal accessible works like painting of ceilings, doors, etc. Things that can be done either with a short ladder or on foot into the same year. So everything here is packaged into 2026. And the idea is, while the paint contractor is there, we address all the items in the trade, the painting trade in this instance, reducing the fixed overhead cost of the contractor, which would normally apply to each project. So this might mean that something is maintained a year too early, but this puts the complex into a healthy maintenance cycle. So in being over the course of 10 years and more, we see savings in the total cost of the maintenance plan by introducing this new maintenance cycle. All right. So a good plan should have defined timelines. We briefly look at the last maintained dates and maintenance cycles and the totaling amounts into the applicable years. But let's delve a bit deeper into what the timelines does to the maintenance plan. So looking at the same paint example with everything packaged in 2026, the years cycle of the components are in this case linked to a 10-year cycle. So, and that is based off a 10-year guarantee that was in place for this complex. So it's a 10-year paint guarantee that was in place and from a previous project, and guarantees on elements is a very good indicator of how much time should we allow, how many years should we allow between maintenance intervals. So we know this 10-year span is supposed to be the minimum lifespan according to these guarantees. And in the managing of this plan, this should be looked at annually and adjusted according to deterioration or no deterioration. So the paint can last much longer than 10 years. It's always this is not, the maintenance plan is not the rule. It's something that moves every year, and with the inspection of every element, it should be moved either a year earlier or a year later, depending on where how much the element deteriorated. Okay, so finally, the maintenance plan must be managed. Managing the plan includes regular inspections of all the components of the plan. And it can be easy as paint can be a visual inspection done as you walk through the complex, or a formal one every 6 months. Roofs can be annually, and preferably by a competent person or an engineer. Someone that actually climbs into the roof void and inspecting the timber or steel elements and the state of the roof covering. When you're inside that roof void, it looks totally different from the outside. You can see water where water might have come in and rot some of the timber elements, or if you see daylight through a hole or crack in the roof covering, then that's when you need to act on the roof. Okay, so knocking on walls reveals hollow points. If you have a clop sound, meaning plaster behind the paint is failing, and that needs to be addressed. Cracks in walls should be noted and reported, and an engineer should come out and have a look at that. Leaning retaining walls and garden walls, we find that a lot, should be noted and reported. These things grow and grow and grow, and until it falls down, and then it's a big cost. Okay, another important one is rust streaks. So if you find rust streaks on the facade of your building, that might be an indicator of spalling. Now, spalling is when the reinforcing steel inside the concrete is exposed to water and it starts to rust. Now, when steel rusts, it actually expands and it starts to push off the concrete. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that in your lifetimes. Now, we call it the cancer of the buildings because you never know how deep that thing goes, and that's a very costly repair. Okay, paving joints. If your pavers start to move apart from each other, that might be an indicator that your subsoil below the paving is failing. And then keeping gutters clean of leaves and tree felling, that goes a long way. So leaves in gutters or on balconies attract dust, and dust turns to mud. Mud retains moisture, and all of this leads to block outlets and rusting away of elements, which is unnecessary maintenance. So just getting someone to periodically clean the gutters and make sure your outlet pipes is open. So it's small things that make a very big difference. And it's not necessarily things that we need professionals to get out and have a look at. It's something that we can do while walking around. All right. So managing the timing of the maintenance plan is very crucial. Here we can visually see the maintenance plan cash flow over 10 years. We see the corrective and the schedule. The corrective maintenance is this blue line here that's only applicable in year one, our 201,000 Rand. And the planned maintenance year, the schedule, is the 222,000 year, and this is the one running like a snake here. Okay, so in year one, we have our normal maintenance, the planned maintenance, and the corrective maintenance. And then we have a spike in year 4, and a spike in year 7, and a spike in year 10. So all of this always being budget and available funds sensitive means the spikes needs to be addressed in the preceding years. Meaning before year 4, we need to start accumulating funds in year 3, 2, and 1 to be able to pay for the spike in year 4. We'll delve in that deeper. That is our 2026 mark, is our big painting project where we packaged everything together. Okay, so we know what is coming and we can plan for it by trying to marry the maintenance levy to this plan. Another solution can be to split these big projects over 2 or more years, reducing these spikes and flattening out the cash flow curve. Now, this does relieve high expenses in 1 year, like 2026, by splitting the cost over multiple years, but it also increases the total maintenance cost over 10 years. And that's due to escalation in the years after, and the establishment cost of the contractors. Every time they have to come to site, they have to establish. So there's a fixed cost that goes with that. It is easy to split the spikes into more than 1 year, especially if the complex is divided into blocks. We can do block A, B, C first and the rest in the next year. So again, this all depends on what the complex can afford in a single year, and thus the time planning and the moving of the budget. We always have sessions with the body corporate to talk about firstly, what is possible. It doesn't help we put a Rolls-Royce plan down, but it's not possible to execute with the funds available and what can come in. A special levy is not always the answer. So in that session, we also explained to them what is unavoidable and urgent and what we need to do now, and that being our corrective maintenance that is usually due now. And we then move the maintenance projects around to try and suit the budget with hopefully no or minimal special levies introduced. But yeah, get to a point where the project, the complex can just be straightforward maintained. All right. So why does the plan matter? A good maintenance plan reduces emergencies, it improves budgetary accuracy, and it helps trustees make informed decision. So it turns maintenance from reactive chaos into controlled management. Now let's talk a bit about poor maintenance. Poor maintenance will result in, firstly, emergency repairs that cost more. So this means we have after hours call outs, urgent sourcing of materials. So there's no time for the contractors to procure best price materials or to get more than one quote. We just appoint, come and do the job. It needs to be done now. Temporary fixes that needs to be addressed again later. In essence, you pay a premium for emergency repairs. Damage escalation. A small leak that is ignored results in water damage. That results in a structural repair and repainting. So one problem suddenly became 5 problems. Special levies. When major failure happened and we have poor maintenance planning, we have no reserve funds with no planning. So owners are suddenly asked to pay large amounts and fork up monies that was theoretically due by previous year's levies. And often previous owners as well that enjoyed low levies in the past and have sold and moved on. And the new owners sit with historical maintenance that should have been done and haven't been. And then a very important one, insurance implications. So poor insurance can increase premiums and lead to rejected claims. And insurance may not cover neglect, because it will not cover neglect. Let me quickly read to you some extracts from risk assessments done on some complexes. There's 4 of them. So first one, it was observed that the structure has internal damp with a black mold. It is required that general damp coursing be conducted. The second one, it is a condition precedent to liability that all firefighting equipment or fire protection at the premises is installed, maintained and serviced in accordance with the regulations contained in the National Building Regulations or any other regulations that may be contained in the respective energy services bylaws. In this case, the client is currently in breach of this condition. So that's the firefighting equipment. The third one, the present electrical reticulation was found to be not acceptable, and it is required that the client obtain an electrical certificate of compliance. Various open and unsafe connections were noted. Then the next one, leaking roof was noted. It is required that the client get the service of a reputable service provider, very important, to have a look at the roof and repairs to be done or replace roof sheeting where necessary and ceilings repaired. They had a sub-note for that one. We will not pay for any loss or damage to the roof or directly or indirectly caused by or arising from or aggravated by or resulting from the roof, including resultant water damage, until we have received satisfactory proof that the roof have been maintained and waterproofed and ceilings are repaired. So then for all of these above examples, the following. The client needs to address this to prevent future complications and claims arising. Kindly refer to the specific exclusions in the policy wording, and please be reminded of the insured's duty to exercise all reasonable precautions for the maintenance of the building. Ensure that this is made aware to the insured. Okay, so in summary, these items will be rejected if it's claimed because it was not maintained by the body corporate. And the body corporate did not exercise all reasonable precautions for the maintenance of the building. That is why it's so important to have the maintenance plan and manage it. So poor maintenance doesn't save money, it delays costs and it multiplies them. Managing contractors. So even with a good plan, the execution is key here. Excuse me. So firstly, guys, use qualified contractors. Check and ask for certifications. Verify their experience. Ask for references. Avoid cheap but risky options. You'll know when you get a bad feeling. And remember, poor workmanship leads to repeated costs. Have a clear scope of work. Always define what exactly must be done. Define the expected quality, explain to them what needs to be achieved, and put down time frames, when to start and when the works must be completed. So avoid the misunderstandings. As I shown previously, in a good maintenance plan where everything is defined, this guides the trustees when asking for quotes to explain to the contractors what they need them to quote on. So the contractors should be instructed on what to include rather than them proposing the scope of works. And then we run the risk of an inexperienced contractor thinking he can do the job for a cheap price. And they can sell it to you. Get multiple quotations. Always get 3 quotes. 2 quotes is not enough. If there's a big difference, then the process starts over. If you get 3 quotes, you can properly compare the pricing, compare the solutions, and do not just select the cheapest option. Spend time talking to the guys on what they're going to do, not just appointing someone. So again, in the good maintenance plan where the work packages are defined with the quantity, the contractors can price on that, and you can really, really compare apples with apples. All right. Supervision and accountability. When the work is done, take the time to inspect the completed work and sign it off. Ensure that the standards you set out beforehand and are met, and don't approve payments too early. Deposits are the worst, guys. We do get situations where a deposit is fair towards a contractor, but then we ask them to tell us why they need a deposit. Usually they have their accounts and they will get paid, but deposits isn't the answer to get someone going on site. Insist on guarantees for their work done. and have a contract in place before starting. That's very important. The contract defines the scope, it defines the timelines, it defines payment terms, and it just protects the contractor and the body corporate. Where without a contract, everything is grey, and in the end, it's a big fight. All right, and then build relationships with your contractors. So a reliable, known contractor for your complex, understand the property, and they will respond faster when you call them, and over time they will offer better pricing, and there's a lot of value in that relationship. All right, so in conclusion, reactive maintenance is expensive and stressful. Planned preventative maintenance is controlled, cost-effective, and protects the assets and the people. A strong maintenance plan avoids financial surprises. We know what we're going to get, and poor maintenance leads directly to higher levies. Good contractor management ensures quality and value. Maintenance is not just about fixing things. It's about protecting our investments and saving money in the long term. And that's it, guys. Thank you. We can open the floor for some questions.
Excellent. Thanks very much. That was very informative, Engelbertus, and certainly demystifies 10-year maintenance plans and how to work with them. I think maybe just a first question, could you just from a practical point of view explain what do you do from arriving on site in terms of compiling a 10-year maintenance plan for a body corporate? In this case, that's a legal requirement. It has to be presented at the AGM. But even a homeowners association with common property like boundary walls or security guard houses would benefit from, a 10-year maintenance plan as well. But can you explain, how you do it, what you exactly do on site, and then how you arrive at the table that you walked us through? And perhaps you can also refer to what is the difference with a insurance replacement value survey, which is then also a requirement for bodies corporate every 3 years.
Yeah, perfect. Let me open the maintenance plan here. Show you guys a bit more of what it will look like. So we arrive on site before the process starts. Before we arrive on site, we ask as many questions as we can. Part of the information we request is the complex financials to have a look at some of the normal running maintenance, like servicing gate motors and servicing fire equipment, your normal electrical maintenance expense, and plumbing maintenance expense, because there is a lot of guesswork in those things. And if we have the historical data for that complex, those are easy things to package in. We then go to site and we walk around with a representative, and then we start measuring. So we measure everything in the different packages. So we'll measure the walls, we'll measure the waterproofing that needs to go onto it, windows, timber elements, look at the paving, and then from the state of all those items, we on site do like a mini condition assessment to decide when should this be addressed. If we have some spots in the paving sagging, we can make the call, this needs to happen now, or this is fine for another year. Let it grow a bit more, and it's more viable to do a bigger portion of certain elements than just running and fixing everything, like a melkophoender, if I can use the Afrikaans there. So everything then collected on site, all the measurements, all the data, all the photos, we start punching in our templates. This is our corrective maintenance here. This was some waterproofing to be done, carpentry and joinery. We had problems on the eaves in this complex. This Devil's Fork fence was deteriorating. We needed to replace sections of that. So everything, this might be a bit small for everyone, everything packaged into year one. And that builds up to our summary of what needs to be done. And this is our work packages where we can send out the paintwork bill to, this is the paintwork bill. We can send that out to a contractor and they can price these elements and we can compare apples with apples. All right. So that moves into our summary page in year one. The scheduled maintenance is now in our respective years, and we do escalate from year 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So you'll see here the actual rate for this element is 2,900 per square meter, but by year 2026, that'll be 4,000 Rand, 3,989. And by year 2029, that'll be 5,000 Rand. So we get these data from Stats SA. As quantity surveyors, we have to have it. We pay for all the forecasted escalation data and the historical, and that is our indicators of how we escalate the amount. That then goes all the way down. We always allow a 5% contingency on our budget figures, and that just helps. That and some subnotes. We do have a big photo report, which I took out of this one. I don't have permission from the complex, this one that we did, to show all the photos and all the names with our POPI Act, and respecting their privacy. So that everything goes back to our maintenance dashboard. We show what figures are going to be spent in each year. And then we sit down with the body corporate and we start addressing the spikes and see where we can reduce it and what that means for our total maintenance budget. In this case, it was 6 million Rand over 10 years. And then on your question on the insurance replacement estimates, Andrew, so that actually goes in well with the maintenance plans. Like we saw what the condition assessments from the insurers said about things not being maintained the way they should be. When we do the insurance replacement estimates, which is the us going to site, also measuring all of these things, and then in the end, giving you guys estimated value that the building should be insured at. And in turn, the insurance houses use that to give you a quote to insure the building. So when we go out for the insurance valuations, we also do a condition assessment, and a lot of photos and all that information goes to the insurer. So they probably have more, when you have a claim, more information than you would think. So there's no hiding that there's poor maintenance. There's a lot of times there's a big photo library of the complex, and they know what's going on. Yeah.
Right. No, thanks, Engelbertus. So, just to say then that there is a synergy or an overlap between the insurance replacement value survey and the 10-year maintenance plan inspection. And it's often
100%.
cost effective to combine those inspections. And, for bigger, complicated buildings, using a specialist such as Cloud makes a lot of sense, because I think everyone can see the quality of the report, the level of detail and thought and planning that goes into it, plus a lot of the backup data to StatsSA, etc., which you've talked about. And it becomes very helpful for budgeting purposes, because underlying this is a maintenance reserve budget, which is presented every year at the AGM. And that's the mechanism by which funds are saved and built to be able to execute a maintenance plan of this type. Engelbertus, just give us some of the current pitfalls or challenges you see at buildings, as you go around and do the inspections. Where does maintenance go wrong? What are the common, challenges which lead to wasted costs or ineffective maintenance at schemes?
And always water. Anything to do with water. So from the roofs down, we always advise the body corporates to start with the roofs, get that fixed. Start with waterproofing, because it filters down and destroys everything below it. So where maintenance goes wrong is where the body corporate decides that they rather want the place looking shiny and new, and they start painting and replacing timber doors, but the door frame is not addressed yet. So we must work from, I almost want to say, from the top down, and address the water problems. That if you address the water problems, you've won. Then you can start doing your maintenance. Things like we do come across drainage, plumbing and drainage, which also water, but I must say not that much anymore. That was about 5 years ago. That was a big thing. It was everywhere. It was just people were addressing plumbing and drainage. Electrical as well. It's things that are, it's things in shafts and pipes. It's either wrong or it's right. There's big challenges or little challenges. But the water. So the water, I just want to expand on that. Roofs, waterproofing, cracks in walls where water can come in. It's usually water that starts pushing over retaining walls where swell are getting wet. Paving that is sagging. It's water getting into the voids between the pavers. And it's simple maintenance can fix these things quite easily. We're busy with a maintenance plan now, a building in Johannesburg, and we've been looking after this building for over 10 years now, and this is our our fourth spike cycle, and we replaced a lot of paving, but this time around all we're doing is throwing a sand layer above over the paving and compacting it, and that sand will seep into any voids, and the water will flow off it again. So it's it's become cheap maintenance on that building.
Excellent.
So in short, the water.
Yeah. Engelbertus, maybe just to emphasize, the point you made that, there's a big link between maintenance effectiveness and insurance premium costs. Because what we're seeing now, and certainly with aggravated weather patterns, is that, number one, every time an insurance claim is lodged for resultant damage, the first thing the insurers want to see is proof of roof maintenance in the last 12 months. And that proof typically needs to be an invoice of maintenance done, ideally with photographs. And very often, if there's no proof of maintenance, roof maintenance in the last 12 months, that insurance claim is repudiated on the basis of lack of maintenance. So that's an important point to remember. Second thing is, Lack of maintenance can escalate insurance claims based on secondary damages, resultant damages from water that Engelbert has referred to. As claims increase and loss ratios increase, the insurers naturally are going to be increasing premiums. So lack of maintenance tends to have an impact on rising insurance premiums, to the point of, endorsed policies where certain claim categories won't be covered because of absent maintenance, and ultimately to cancellation of cover because the building's condition does not allow the insurer to accept the risk. So it's a very important interrelationship, and certainly good maintenance can save insurance costs and keep loss ratios down. We're running out of time, Engelbertus, but an important point I'd appreciate your feedback on. One of the challenges is what you can't see, in terms of an inspection or maintenance itself. And in older buildings, rusted galvanized pipes in the walls, in the shafts, which can burst unexpectedly. Those are difficult to maintain because it's hard to see their condition. It's hard to know when maintenance is required, but yet we know the building is aging and the pipes are rusting. And again, they might lead to burst pipes and resultant damage and, maintenance costs and claims. So what should one do about, reticulation systems, in particular water, and to be proactive about, galvanized water pipes that are buried in walls?
Yeah, I think the short answer is start replacing, Andrew. We luckily at a space where, or a time where these pipes, since they stopped installing them and moved over to copper and now the plastic PEX pipes, there's been enough time that there's no more galvanized pipes left in buildings that is not showing big signs of failure. So all the buildings we come to with the galvanized pipes, and what's the other, the Porteyster pipes. So they go directly into our corrective maintenance. We advise the body corporates that we need to start replacing shaft by shaft. We can do pull out the pipes and repipe. It is an expensive exercise, but again, over a 10-year cycle, it's not the most expensive thing. Attending to the breakages and replacing is more expensive. So there's also on top of that, if we start connecting, and it happens a lot, copper pipes to the old galvanized pipes, the two metals don't mix, and we get a buildup of help you guys, what's caulk in English? Is it chalk?
Chalk, yeah.
Buildup of chalk, and the pipes get too much pressure and they start leaking and they push out. And yeah, so it's not the answer to necessarily start keeping some of the galvanized pipes and just adding copper pipes to where we can. The advice is to start ripping out shaft by shaft and replacing with the modern piping systems.
Okay. And Engelbertus, do you include in your plans all the important compliance elements like lift Annexure B certificates, annual firefighting certificates, gas compliance where applicable, electrical compliances, etc.?
We do. We note them, and then we add those. So we typically get the annual service costs and contracts, for instance, a lift, from the body corporate, and we add that to our maintenance plan.
And in your costs, do you allow for project management? So I assume that more complex, more large-scale projects do benefit from a specialized project manager, just to make sure that the specification is followed, that the scope is covered fully, and that the job is completed correctly for payment, and to ensure the guarantee can be honored.
Yeah. So in our maintenance plan, as it is here. We don't add the management cost to it, but that can always be negotiated when the body corporate opts for that. We do offer those services, but it's a negotiated. We handle it per project.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And just to emphasize the point you made, I think it's a very important one that, you know, this is a best estimate. It's, you know, it needs to be updated every year. In certain cases, you know, forecast, you know, lifespans can be much longer. Paint, for example, you mentioned. So, you know, that would be updated and recognized with annual updates and annual inspections. Engelbertus, we're out of time, but excellent. Thank you so much. It's been very helpful, very informative. I think we've all learned a lot, and we appreciate your being here tonight and your experience, which has really come through. I'd like to thank everyone for being with us. A reminder that Karine will circulate the slides, a recording link. It will be posted on training.trafalgar.co.za. If you just go to the contact page, Engelbertus, just off this slide, there are contact details. You are welcome to contact us if there are any unanswered questions there, bottom right. We'll endeavor to come back to you. And, you know, just a shout out to, you know, take a proactive, preventative, long-term maintenance approach to your schemes. It certainly adds value in the long term, and in particular to property prices on sale. So good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to you to our June webinar.